Robert has been very active in IANDS for a long time. He's really given to this organization. He's currently on the board of IANDS and is their treasurer. He and his wife have spent a lot of time thinking about and analyzing what it is that happens in near death. And today they're going to present the future of the NDE and consciousness research, using this transcendent content of NDEs to fathom the mysteries of reality. How can you not but love that title? So, Robert, it's all yours.
Thank you. All right. I'd like to point out that this is research that both Suzanne and I have done, and our website is selfconsciousmind.com. All right, the current state of NDE research. Well, first of all, let's start out with what is an NDE. There is a physical trauma or shock, and there's a near-death experience in which the mind separates from the body and operates independently of it. This is where your consciousness is. It's not in your body at the moment, and it is operating independent of it. Frequently, the physical body is clinically dead. And then there's a return to the body, and after the NDE, the mind is reunited with the body and brain, and there are after effects. All right, up till now, pretty much, certainly in the last 30 years, NDE research has focused on the NDE elements, veridical content, after effects, explanatory models, cultural differences, childhood NDEs, patient care, and so on. And that work is still going on. There's an excellent summary of that in the Handbook of Near-Death Experience by Holden Grayson and James. And recently, Raymond Moody has given us new perspectives with respect to the shared death experience. A shared death experience is an experience that a person who is attending someone who is dying, the person is perfectly healthy, and they're attending a dying relative or friend usually, and they have an experience, being out of the body and so on, just like an NDE, even though they're perfectly healthy. And one of the particular features is that they sometimes share in the life review of the person who is dying, and then at the end of their experience, the person is in fact dead. Now, NDE researchers are only beginning to address larger questions of consciousness, afterlife, the nature of reality, and so on. One good example is Pim van Lommel's book, Consciousness Beyond Life, and another one is Eben Alexander's book, we're eagerly awaiting it, Proof of Heaven, a Neurosurgeon's Journey into the Afterlife. And I'm going to give you our conclusion right at the first slide. Our conclusion is that NDE research can make further progress only by examining the transcendent content elements of the NDE. All right, we'll start off with this question. How much of an NDE is real? Real. Well, reality. What is reality? Well, first of all, there are two distinct phases or realms in the near-death experience and shared death experience. There's the physical earthly realm. The NDE usually starts off in the person's physical location. And they have experiences of their surroundings that are consistent with, by and large, with one's ordinary experience in ordinary health. And there's the transcendent realm. This is the non-physical aspects of the experience. And there's usually a transition from the earthly realm, going through a tunnel, being transported into outer space or some unearthly realm. And there are sometimes cases of the transcendent elements being present while there's still an experience of the physical realm. For example, deceased individuals or spiritual beings might be there in the hospital room. And that's a kind of mixture of the transcendent and the physical. The physical is real, but how about the transcendent? How about the deceased person? How about the being of light? Are they real? So let's consider how real is the NDE to the NDEer. Many NDEers state that their experience is hyperreal. It's a lucid experience. I could even say a hyperlucid experience, something that people who have never had an NDE probably don't really understand. And it's not dreamlike, it's not hallucinatory, it's more real than the experience of this reality. It's realer than real. Jeff Long, in his book, Evidence of the Afterlife, did an analysis of his 1,300 or so NDE accounts. 94% of the NDEers say that they were more conscious and alert than normal, or just as conscious and alert as normal. Eben Alexander, in an interview a few months ago, said, "A much richer consciousness exists when we are freed from the shackles of the physical human brain and mind." Howard Storm, in another interview a number of years ago, said, "The NDE realm is the real one. This reality is the dream." I think he was asked, well, aren't these NDEs just a dream? No. This is the dream. This reality is the dream compared to the reality of the NDE. All right, the best measure of how real an experience is if it has veridical elements, that is, verifiably accurate information or an event. And so that it is not, it can't be an illusion, at least that aspect of it can't be an illusion, hallucination, a dream, because that part we can check is real, is accurate. We can verify it. And especially if the information or the event can possibly have been guessed or occurred by chance, or it occurred just by chance. And there are 4 key anchor points during NDEs that convey veridical information. The first one is perceptions of the earthly realm, which are later verified. The second is information from apparently deceased persons or events that of events or individuals previously unknown to the NDEer. The third is information revealed during the NDE, during the life review in the shared death experience. If you remember, I said that one of the elements in a shared death experience is the person, the perfectly healthy person who's having this experience, shares the life review of the person who is dying. And frequently, because they know the person who's dying, they've been married to that person for many years, they're the mother or the sister, whatever, they know some of those events. But some of the information there, they don't know, and they can check it. And the fourth kind is precognitive visions during the NDE that are later proven correct in every respect, and this is called a life preview. All right, Now I'd like to do some examples of these, and I'd like to start off with perceptions of the earthly realm. So these are, to start with, I'm going to present the four most famous veridical perceptions, veridical experiences. And the first one is Maria Shu. And Maria, well, this is not a picture of Maria. Kim Clark Sharp said, that, no, that's not Maria. We never had a picture of Maria. In any case, this is taken from a video that is explaining this phenomenon, this particular event. Maria, this was in 1976. She was a migrant worker, a Latina. She had a heart attack. She was taken to the hospital. She went into cardiac arrest in the hospital. And of course, they called in the emergency ICU people and did resuscitation. It took a while. Maria was very bored with watching that. She was out of her body. She floated out the window and saw some things outside in the front of the hospital, went around the back and up a bit. And on the window ledge of a window, she saw a tennis shoe. And this is a picture of as Maria saw it. It was a blue tennis shoe, old and worn. It had on the little toe, it was the left shoe, on the little toe, which is pointing out, it was worn here, scuffed, and it had one of the shoelaces was tucked under the heel. Now, Maria came back to her body and was very excited and wanted someone to find the shoe to verify that what she had seen. This is somewhat unusual to see a shoe, tennis shoe on the window ledge of a hospital. Kim Clark Sharp was, at that time, a social worker at the hospital, knew some Spanish, and Maria didn't speak English, and so helped her understand what it was that she needed to look for. Oh, you have to find the shoe. And it's worn on the outside by the little toe. It has the lace underneath the heel. You've got to find it. So Kim went outside, couldn't see it from the ground, went around in the windows of the third floor, several floors actually. Third floor, she found the shoe. It had been stuck out there, and this was what she saw. She saw the lace coming out this way and couldn't see the little toe, but she inferred that the lace came up and must have been, on this side of the shoe, on the outside of the shoe. She picked it up. Yeah, it was as Maria had described. Maria hadn't said what color it was, so Kim went back to Maria, hid the shoe behind her back and said, well, what color was the shoe? Oh, it was blue. It was blue. And Kim presented the shoe, and there was great excitement, not just with Maria, but with a whole lot of people in the hospital staff. And they still remember the story, the experience of the shoe. Okay. The next one is the dentures case. A man in Holland was found in a park having collapsed of cardiac arrest. It was a cold day. That's probably why he survived ultimately. He was brought to the hospital. He was intubated in the, trying to resuscitate him. They had to intubate him. This was in late 70s. In order to intubate, you have to take the dentures. If the person's wearing dentures, you take them out. A male nurse did that. He put him on a crash cart in a drawer underneath. And they resuscitated the man. It took a while, and the man was in a coma for an entire week. And so from when he was found and resuscitated, resuscitation means just get the heart going. He didn't come out of the coma for a week. A few days after that, the male nurse happened to be on duty to administer medications to the man, and the man said, "You're the one who took my dentures out and placed them in the drawer of the crash cart." And the nurse could not fathom how he knew that. And he had a lot of other things that he had reported of what was done. Next one is Al Sullivan. Al Sullivan, you can see, and by the way, this is a veridical, this is a reenactment of this event using the same people. So here we have the real Al Sullivan, and there's a little short video of this from a documentary. And Al Sullivan had heart problems. He needed bypass surgery. He went to the hospital, and he was treated by cardiovascular surgeon Hiro Takata, Dr. Takata. And in the process, his prep, he was eyes were taped shut and covered with gauze. He was intubated. And his head was, there was a surgical drape in front, so there's no way he could see anything below his neck, just the drape. He was outside of his body looking down. He observed a lot of things about what was happening, and among those things, he saw Dr. Takata doing some strange movements. He was flapping his elbows. He said, Sullivan says, it looked like he was trying to fly. He was flapping his elbows like that. And this is a picture of actually how Dr. Takata does work in surgery, in heart surgery. And Al Sullivan comes out and tells another doctor, well, I saw, this, and Dr. Takata was trying to, was flapping his arms. And the doctor said, how do you know that? How did you know that? Who told you? And it happens that Dr. Takata has this habit of putting his hands on his hips when he's in surgery so that he doesn't touch anything that might be unsterile. And then he points, if he wants somebody to do something, he points, do this over here, oh yeah, and you do that over here. And so he is moving around, and if you watch the video, you can see that. So and there's no way that Al Sullivan could have seen that. He was anesthetized, eyes taped shut, and behind the drape. All right, we fortunately had someone tell us about Pam Reynolds, Tony Sikoria. I'll just very briefly summarize this. Pam Reynolds had an aneurysm at the base of her brain. She worked with Dr. Spetzler, neurosurgeon. There was a procedure called hypothermic standstill surgery, where the blood is cooled and drained from the body, the heart stops, and they do the operation and so on. But the usual things happened. She was under anesthesia. Her eyes were taped shut. There were clicking devices put in her ears, and actually there was gauze put over those. And what did Pam Reynolds see? She saw a number of things and heard some things. She was out of her body, she was looking over the shoulder, and she saw the bone saw. And she says, the saw thing looked like an electric toothbrush with interchangeable blades in a socket wrench case like my father had when I was growing up. And here's the socket wrench case. This is the case for the saw blades. And then she says, a female voice further down, said something about my veins and arteries being very small. And this was verified by the medical record, which Dr. Sabom examined, and also by interviews with Dr. Spetzler. And this was a reenactment in the Day I Died DVD video. Okay. So, getting back to the other evidence of veridical perceptions. You remember there are 4 key anchor points. The first one is perceptions of the earthly realm, reissue, etc. We've gone over those. In addition, Dr. Sabom in 1982 did a comparison of the descriptions NDEs have of resuscitation procedures compared with non-NDEs that went through similar experiences, being in the hospital and so on, having heart problems. And Penny Sartori in 2008 repeated that with her, in her study and found the same results, and that is the NDEs had accurate descriptions and the non-NDEs had lots of errors. Also of, and Jen Holden published in the handbook a study of veridical perception cases in the literature, 93 of them, 92% of them were completely accurate. These are the ones that were verified. And then 6% were accurate with some errors, and there were 2 that were completely wrong. So, given all of that, even though consciousness apparently separates from the body, it's having accurate perceptions of the physical environment. It's also having memory formation, very interesting, since the brain in many cases is not operating at all. And in a number of these cases, the person travels to a distant location or down the hall, but certainly out of view of anything that they could possibly physically see, and have veridical perceptions. Okay, the second one is information from apparently deceased persons of events or individuals previously unknown to the NDE. 3 examples. During an NDE, a man during his NDE saw a deceased man who looked at him lovingly, and that's all that happened in his NDE. 10 years later, his mother, on her deathbed, confessed to him that he was born out of wedlock, and his biological father was actually a Jewish man who was arrested by the Nazis and killed in a concentration camp. She showed him a picture of his father, his biological father, and that was the person that he saw in his NDE. And a young boy was in the hospital. He was very ill. He was unconscious through most of the night. He came to consciousness again and said he was in heaven and met deceased relatives, and my sister, Teresa, was there too. And she said, I have to go back. And the father said, well, your sister is in college. She's fine. I just talked to her earlier this evening, or earlier the previous evening. And he went home and found that the college had been trying to get a hold of him to tell him that his daughter had died in a car accident that same night. Third case, a young woman met an apparently deceased uncle, Frank, who she had never heard of. And he referred to some long-held family secrets. It turns out that her aunt had been previously married to Frank during the war. She was pregnant. He was shipped off to Europe. She had a miscarriage when she learned that Frank had been killed in the war. She then married someone else who forbade her or anybody else to talk about Frank, no mention of Frank. And everybody kept to that. When she had her NDE, she met Frank. And Frank says, tell your aunt that I have... Sorry. Tell your aunt that I have the baby and we're both okay. And I'm your Uncle Frank. And of course, when she revealed this, it was like a big shock to the family that, how did she get that information? All right, the third veridical information revealed during the life review that was unknown to the shared death experience. So this is the person who's perfectly healthy attending the dying person. They observe the life review of the person who's dying. 2 cases from Raymond Moody. The wife was present as her husband was dying and saw his life review, and saw him as a teenager with girls he knew before she and he had met. She went back to his high school yearbook and found pictures of them. A mother was attending her dying son, adult son, and saw his life review, and of course he had moved out and gone to college and so on, knew other people, and she saw friends and places that he had been and friends that he knew, and she went to those places to verify it and recognized his friends. And then precognitive visions during the NDE that are later proven correct in every respect, the life preview. A young man had a vision of family life during his NDE. He was in his early 20s. There was a scene in a living room with a wife and children. He was not married at the time. 28 years later, that scene happened just as he had seen it. In the intervening time, he met the woman he married. They had children. They bought a house. It all came together 28 years later when he recognized that that's what he saw in his NDE. Jenny Summers had an NDE as a teenager, and I've got to read this because it's precious in a kind of bittersweet way. So she's just coming out of her NDE, and her mom is there, walking into the hospital room. She had taken a smoke break. So here's quoting. As soon as I see my mom, I blurted out in total happiness. Now if you've had an NDE, you know what this means. Total happiness. Mom, you're going to die in 2 years. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for you. And she says, I wish it were me, but at least it's you. Oh, and Teresa, that's her sister, her older sister, says, Teresa will be with you at the moment of your death, but Teresa won't cross over with you. I wish I was going back there with you, Mom. And she says, I tell her all this with such enthusiasm and happiness as if I were telling her that she won a mega lottery. Finally, I stop and take note of her odd facial expression. And 2 years later, there was an accident, and Jenny's mom died, and Jenny's sister was in the car but survived. By the way, she forgot that part of her NDE within a few days of her NDE. She would not have remembered it had she not blurted that out. Because her mom asked her, well, you remember I was going to be in an accident? Oh, I don't remember that at all. Did I say that? So, anyway. Third case, a man saw a large part of his future in his NDE. He created a list of all the things he had seen, and then as they happened, he ticked them off. And it included a vision of his wife on her deathbed wrapped in a white shawl. It happened that white shawl was given to her by a friend the day before. So the last three, that is of these cases, or types of cases, are from the transcendent realm. Deceased individuals inside the transcendent realm, viewing someone else's life review, that's transcendent. Precognitive visions, that's transcendent. So again, if veridical if there's a veridical experience, it's not an illusion, hallucination, it's not a guess. Something real happened in the exchange in these cases. So, we can verify each incident either as direct apparent perceptions or information that was previously not known, and those parts of the NDE are real in some sense. And of course, you can argue, and I'm not going to go through this, but you can argue, well, you know, they could really physically perceive this, or there's another hypothesis called superpsi. I'm not going to go into that. And those hypotheses are rather empty, and primarily because they do not match the phenomenon of the NDE. It's like you have to really shoehorn those kinds of explanations in. But there is a reason why these have some, traction among researchers, is that there is a difficulty in accepting the phenomenon even when you have evidence of it in front of you. Why don't we simply accept what appears to happen, what the phenomenon purports is what actually happened? Well, there's a real reluctance, even among NDE researchers and among NDEers, who start to have doubts about their, well, was this really happening? Did this really happen? So getting back to the question, how much of the NDE is real? One reason for reluctance, is that you need to take the weird aspects of the NDE and the contradictions in NDEs, among NDEs, along with the rest. And that's a hard pill to swallow for many people. They say, whoa, wait a minute. This is really going to change everything. That's another fear. Oh my gosh, what we know isn't really all of it. And there's a real hesitancy to say, wait a minute, this is only a small part of reality. This physical reality is only a small part of reality. Actually, there's a huge amount of other transcendent aspects of reality. So what about the other elements that can't be verified, that occur in the transcendent realm? The spiritual beings, heavenly regions, crystal cities, libraries of knowledge, realms of confusion and despair, etc. If some parts are not real, where do we draw the line? Because we know some parts are real in some sense. So, okay, they go to a crystal city and they are out in this heavenly field and they meet a deceased person who tells them something veridical. Well, all that other stuff, that's not real. Well, wait a minute, where does the real start and where does the non-real end? You can't say. How could veridical information be obtained from the transcendent aspects if the transcendent aspects are totally unreal? So if some parts of the transcendent appear unreal, what about the experience of the NDEers who almost unanimously say that what they experience is hyperreal? Okay, well, wait a minute. All right, what they experienced of, the crystal city, well, that was really not real, but when they got this information, well, that's real. And even though they thought everything was real throughout their NDE, well, these other parts are not real. You can't make that argument. And so our position is the phenomena in NDE are what they appear to be. Now, there's a problem if there are contradictions. So we say unless there are other aspects of the phenomena that are contradictory. And this is the essence of the phenomenological method that Raymond Moody used when he first studied NDEs. You study the phenomenon. We take it that the NDE is a veridical experience throughout, and that the phenomena will give us indications to the true nature of reality. And yes, it will change everything. But there are plenty of indications that this is the right approach. And we'll talk about that. So given that conclusion, what approach could we take? If you just give us a little bit of leeway here to make that assumption, there could be a systematic investigation of the transcendent content of NDEs that should provide fruitful research directions. We need to use phenomenological analysis. There needs to be, we need to realize that the transcendent reality is different, a different reality in many respects from the ordinary physical reality. And not try to impose our experience of the physical onto the transcendent, because that can lead to errors. And we need to study the other elements, and I've listed them there. I know those of you who heard Sarah Hines and Brent Hines' talk yesterday, they did this. They took evidence in NDEs of children prior to their birth who then later were born. They took a transcendent element and did that work. So there is a precedent in this approach. And one fruitful method is to look at commonalities and themes. So commonalities among the accounts, themes, there are these common cities of light, libraries, research labs that people encounter. Well, all of those instances, how common are they? What are they saying? Are they at the same place? And then there's this problem of inconsistencies. And there's an answer to that from the NDE. The nature of transcendent reality appears to be changeable. And the question is there a true representation possible? Mel and Thomas Benedict, who will be speaking tomorrow, your beliefs, and this comes in early part of his NDE. He saw the image of a being, a light being, and the image kept changing. And he said, well, what's going on here? And the light being said, your beliefs shape the kind of feedback you are getting before the light. What is presented to the NDEer is what the NDEer is expecting. Now that's the end of the quote. And our conclusion is what is presented to the NDEer is what the NDEer is expecting. But there is a true representation of the transcendent realm, but they're trying to accommodate the NDEer and not blow them away with what they really look like. Howard Storm encountered angels, and he was blown away by just being with these angels. You can see why in a minute. And the angel said, well, we angels can appear to you in human form if you wish, or in any form you want, so you will be comfortable with us. And Howard says, no, you're more beautiful than anything I've ever seen. And then he is an artist, and he painted these pictures of angels. And these are in full color, and of course it's coming from his book, which is in black and white, but you'll have to imagine the colors. This one, I don't know if you read it, Talk with Angels. He says the angels had a bright opalescent glow, and this is a portrait of an angel. All right, moving on. So applying these ideas to the problem of consciousness, and this is a major focus of our work, but we're not going to go into a lot of detail about it. The hard problem of consciousness, Eben Alexander spoke of this, and so does David Chalmers, who essentially coined the term. How do you explain that? How do you explain how neural brain activity can produce subjective phenomenal experience, such as the experience of the quality of red? And it is generally felt intractable by just about everybody, including NDE researchers like Bruce Gratian, who mentioned it last year, and actually I think it was Tony Sikori said, but I think it will be solved in my lifetime. So there's hope. Actually, the research that we did on consciousness and the evidence from the NDE is that the mind is an autonomous, non-material, energetic entity that ordinarily is united with the brain, but separates from it in the NDE. It interacts with the brain when we're in our body. It has a specific locus in space and visual perspective when we're independent of the body. And the being of the person is that mind. And therefore, wherever they feel that they are, wherever they feel that they are, their visual perspective, that's where they are, that's who they are. And because the mind is the seat of consciousness and interacts with the brain, the hard problem can be solved. And here's a picture of the way we envision it. The mind is interpenetrating the brain and interfaces with the surface of the cortex. And as there's electrical activity in the cortex, it produces phenomenal experience in the mind. So your experience is a mind experience that is aided by the brain. And here's how the biggest challenge of this research is how does the non-material mind interact with the brain? And we're making some progress. It's slow. Kenny Arnett has a theory of essence, written in papers a while ago. We have written a paper last year, a theory of mind and brain that solves the hard problem. Here's our idea. The mind is interacting with neural structures of the brain. The brain is organized in mini columns, and this is the cells of this distance. This is the top layers of the cortex. The top 1.5 to 2 millimeters of your cortex have these cells in it, and the cells have a cell body and a vertical, what is called an apical dendrite. These are pyramidal cells. They are a particularly structured cell. They have a long apical dendrite that goes up to the surface of the cortex. And so you have at the surface all of these apical dendrites that can have oscillations in them that can be induced by the mind, this is our theory, or can induce something in the mind. This is how we would envision perceptual elements to occur. Each mini column in the perceptual areas of your brain have a perceptual purpose, and this one is going to tell you this, and a whole bunch of others around it are going to tell you that what you're seeing is red. But what is happening is that there are electrical activities that originated in your eye that go to this part of the brain, and when these apical dendrites oscillate, then you get a perceptual element, red. And that's how it interfaces. Now, there's a huge amount of work still to be done. We're doing experimental work with physical interactions, energetic physical interactions with NDEs who have experienced strong after effects, with phantom limb subjects, and with energy healers and others. And also, and what we do is having the energetic person interact with another person's brain, or with objects doing PK, psychokinesis, or with phosphorescent materials that will emit light. All right, so moving on to the next problem. We feel, by the way, that the hard problem of consciousness is completely tractable. It's not an intractable problem. All right. So what is the nature of reality? This is what we're calling the harder problem of reality. You thought the hard problem was of consciousness. This is the harder problem of reality. Now, we have two worlds. And what is the relationship between the two worlds? So that's the first question that we can ask. How much of an intersection is there between the two realities? Well, what remains of the physical reality when the NDE has crossed to the transcendent realm? Not much. If you're in the transcendent realm, you might be able to have a window back to the physical realm that you came from, and Howard Strom had that experience, and others do. But that's it. What remains of the transcendent realm when you come back to the physical world? Well, it's a huge amount. First of all, you feel that you're living in two worlds simultaneously. This is NDEs I'm talking about. And according to our theory, that's perfectly logical because, for everyone actually, because one's mind is the transcendent aspect of one's being. And there are NDE or after effects where the energetic part of your being comes outside your body. And so you have psychic abilities, precognitive dreams, there's other anomalous effects, paranormal phenomena, and so on. Next we can ask, which is more basic? Which realm is more basic? And first we can ask from the viewpoint of the NDE. All right, so here's Mellon Thomas again in a much deeper part of his experience. I was in the void. I was in pre-creation before the Big Bang. I had crossed over the beginning of time, the first word, the first vibration. I was in the eye of creation. This is out in space. I felt as if I was touching the face of God. So the transcendent preceded the physical, and it encompasses it. Ned Doherty's account says, God revealed to me that I had been created as a spiritual being at the beginning of creation, of the creation of the universe. It was also part of God's plan to create a physical world as a place of learning and growth. So here, again, the transcendent realm precedes the physical, and the physical is subordinate to it. Now, secondly, we can look at it from the viewpoint of the transcendent phenomena in the NDE. So, the transcendent realm transcends the physical. It is independent of matter, space, time, and physical energy. The physical realm is matter, space, time, and physical energy. The transcendent realm leaks into the physical world, but not vice versa. It is more conceivable that the physical, and the way it leaks into the world are all these physical anomalies that you have of, psychokinesis and metal bending and, precognitive dreams and being able to connect with deceased individuals. It is more conceivable that the physical can be derived from the transcendent than vice versa. Through the activity, and one way we conceive of is that it is the activities of spiritual beings who have brought the physical world into existence. And the physical world is the entire universe. Spiritual beings have brought the physical realm into existence. And why did they do that? Well, the NDEs tell us why. So that we can learn to love, learn to be self-conscious, free individuals. All right, and there are these physical anomalies that leak in. I mentioned that. All right, our position is, now this is still, just an assertion. Our position is that the transcendent is the more basic, the physical derives from it, the transcendent is the source, and the transcendent realm subsumes and permeates the physical. All right, so how do we go about studying this? Well, there are paranormal phenomena that occur in NDEs or as the after effects in NDEs, and they're worth studying. And this is just a broad brush. There's this phenomenon of the mind connection, where the mind appears to be operating beyond space, where wherever you direct your thoughts, that's where you are. And that can occur even in the physical realm with remote viewing and absent healing. But certainly in the transcendent realm, wherever you think, that's where you are. There's precognition. There's this strange aspect of time where past, present, and future are there simultaneously, but it's not quite that simple. And that occurs, of course, in this realm too. And then psychokinesis, there is an energetic interaction, non-material interaction with physical objects without the use of normal forces. And there are physical anomalies like teleportation. And teleportation is a case where a person or an object disappears in the physical world, disappears from the location that it is in, while other people are looking, and appears somewhere else. And there's an NDEer that we have interviewed who has had this experience several times, where she is off walking, and a reliable person is watching, and all of a sudden she disappears. You disappeared on me. And then she ends up back in her hotel room where the person that she was with was waiting for her in the lobby, and there was no way to get to her hotel room without going past him. All right. So there are these four archetypal phenomena dealing with space, time, energy, and matter. So that's one way. How do we go about studying them? All right, we did that. So what are the current efforts in the field? All right, well, here's where we're going to be a little critical. Currently, researchers in this field generally are working from the physical to the transcendent, from what we know to what we don't know, and it's looking for the key under the lamp because it's more convenient than trying to find the key 10 yards away from the lamp where it actually is. And it's working backwards, and we feel it will not work. There's a way out, though. So there's this issue of quantum non-locality, and I'll give you two quotes. Pim van Lommel, in his book Consciousness Beyond Life, says, consciousness cannot be localized in any particular place, not even the brain. It is non-local, that is, everywhere, in the form of probability waves. And Stuart Hameroff recently wrote, at death, the quantum information which constitutes consciousness could shift to deeper planes and continue to exist purely in space-time geometry outside the brain, distributed non-locally, a quantum soul apart from the body. Of course, when you're in the body, the soul is the quantum phenomena in your brain. And both of these models do not fit the phenomenology of NDE. Thank you. But only when quantum phenomena are taken as indications of the transcendent source, for example, will this work? So you could say, all right, well, what about that spooky action at a distance that Einstein didn't like? Well, that's a transcendence of space. And what about the quantum phenomena that is influenced by consciousness? Well, that's the influence of a transcendent aspect of reality, your consciousness. So what can we make of the transcendent realm? Well, we should use the phenomena themselves to understand the phenomena. So the foremost feature of the transcendent realm is transcendent beings. God, the being of light, angels, etc. Let me just repeat that. The foremost feature of the transcendent realm is transcendent beings. The transcendent atmosphere is pervaded by love. The light in the transcendent realm is the breath of God. Knowledge is the goal. And knowledge is not just the goal, it is to learn to become free, independent, self-conscious spiritual beings. One's inner state becomes one's outer surroundings, and we've talked about that with Mel and Thomas Benedict and Howard Storm. And this locality versus non-locality. In the transcendent realm, this is the way things work. It's complex, it's not easy, but in the physical realm, it appears as an enigma within the transcendent realm, but this is why it's complex. Within the transcendent environment, events still seem to go on in a sequence. So not everything is happening all at once. There are localized beings and localized perspectives. So not everything is not everywhere, space-wise. And things that appear simultaneously and so on work differently in any case from the physical realm. And the transcendent realm is incalculable compared to the calculable physical realm with measurements. And don't try to take a measuring stick up to the transcendent realm. And so these are the research directions which I think we can just mention again these realms, these areas. Space, the phenomena that connect to space, the phenomena that connect to time, the phenomena that connect with energy, the phenomena that connect to matter. So, we're out. Questions? Are we on? Dos. Questions? Well, you got to come. You get it real close to the mic.
I have two questions. I'm not a scientist, but I'm curious when you talk about the mind-brain connection.
Yeah.
Is it possible that when someone experiences an NDE, that their brain's electrical activity is at a much reduced level so that it frees up the mind to access other energy levels?
Yes.
Okay.
And more importantly, if you really are having an NDE, it separates completely.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel that there's a continuum where they separate partially, and then and you have a somewhat different. You don't have a full NDE if it's only partially separated. Yeah.
Okay. And you also gave as an example of a young child who had an NDE and met his sister who had passed that evening.
Yes.
And I'm just curious because I'm a medium and a psychic, so I'm able to access various, other levels of energy. Generally, when someone has just passed, they're in a different energy level than a soul that has really been gone much longer, because they ascend to various vibrations. So I'm just curious, in an NDE, how that's explained that this person, does that mean that they traveled at a lower level, that they were able to access someone who had just passed, who had immediately passed, as opposed to, kind of going way out there?
Right. Okay, well, there's two parts of that. Yes, they've just passed, so they are still around. But what's more interesting is, how do they know that you're supposed to go back? And that's not, this occurs frequently. This is not just this one case. There are a number of cases like this, and we don't know. Okay.
Well, they have access to all the information once they've passed.
But they just got there themselves, so I don't know.
Well, I think once you step over,
yeah,
you just know.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll do, I don't know how many we got. Go ahead.
Many thanks. I enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
I wear my purple badge with pride.
Yes.
In your vocabulary, is reality, awareness, and consciousness, are they synonymous?
Well, is our awareness, are we separated?
Yes.
And from one perspective, yes, we're separated, particularly in the physical realm, because we are here and we feel that we are not there. But in reality, we are not separated. And we don't realize that, most of us. NDEers realize that a whole lot more than most people.
Okay. The other part of my question, you've allowed the jigsaw puzzle of my cosmic image to fall into place, just another piece.
Oh, good.
It's the first time I've ever heard this. I grew up under apartheid, but influenced by the church, the Protestant religion.
Right.
I got to the other side, purple void all around me.
Yes.
I was confused. I thought, where am I? How did this all begin?
Yeah.
And virtually instantly,
Yes.
I saw two molecules against the purple void, and these two molecules collided. And instantly, I saw the Big Bang.
Wow.
If you want evidence of that, it's outside in the images of my art. All
Yes.
those colors are the
Yes.
colors of the Big Bang.
You're Jack Bybee.
Oh, you guessed. Good Lord. I'm famous.
No.
Thank you,
No,
Robert May.
I've read your badge, but and I know that you have artwork here, but yes. And I now will look at your paintings with additional insight. Thank you.
It's the first time I've heard of the pre-Big Bang. I
Yes.
thought it was, I drove the librarians in my hometown. I drove them nuts trying to find out where the other molecules came from.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. No, sorry. Thank you.